الرسمية.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi says the state should be fair in implementing the nationwide crackdown on illegal arms, saying the Lebanese army must raid Hezbollah locations in Beirut. The Lebanese army says it has arrested Ghali Hadara, an accomplice of an alleged ISIS commander who worked to establish an Islamic emirate in North Lebanon. And Iraqi Peshmerga fighters enter the Syrian border town of Kobani, where they are expected to join the battle against ISIL fighters besieging the town. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi says the state should be fair in implementing the nationwide crackdown on illegal arms, saying the Lebanese army must raid Hezbollah locations in Beirut. Hours after denying a report he transferred money to Islamist militants. He also said people who carry arms were not necessarily terrorists, defending Tripoli against claims that the northern city was a bastion of Islamist militants, especially after the army engaged in deadly fighting with gunmen in Bab al-Tabani. Rifi, a former security chief, made the remarks at the house of Dib al-Lahib, a member of his security detail, hours after the minister denied a report in a local newspaper that he used Lahib to transfer money to militants holding Lebanese soldiers hostage in order to prevent the execution of one of the captives. North Lebanon Mufti Sheikh Malik al-Shahad has urged the Lebanese government to do more to help the impoverished northern region and establish a construction and development council for that purpose. Shahad's appeal came during a meeting he held along with several religious and political figures from Tripoli, including Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi, to discuss the recent clashes in the city and the need for development projects there. Shahad and the attendees praised former Prime Minister Saad Hariri for donating $20 million for the reconstruction of Tripoli following the deadly clashes. The government also allocated $20 million in compensation and reconstruction projects. The Lebanese army says it has arrested an accomplice of an alleged ISIS commander who worked together to establish an Islamic emirate in North Lebanon. An army unit arrested Ghali Hadara in the northern region on suspicion of forming a terrorist cell in coordination with Ahmad Mikati, an alleged ISIS commander, to establish an Islamic emirate. Mikati's arrest triggered 4 days of clashes between Islamist militants and the army in Tripoli and other villages in the north. Since then, and after the military successfully drove out the armed groups, the military has launched nationwide raids in search of suspects, detaining dozens and seizing several arms caches. In its statement, the army said Hadara fled to Bab al-Tabani after the military raided a location where his armed group had taken refuge. He was arrested while trying to escape to the neighborhood. Iraqi Peshmerga fighters have begun entering the Syrian border town of Kobani, where they were expected to join the battle against ISIL fighters besieging the town. The Peshmerga forces arrived with heavy weapons to help Syrian Kurds fend off attempts by Islamic State insurgents to seize the Syrian town and cement control in the Turkish border region. U.S.-led airstrikes hit Islamic State positions around Kobani on Friday in an apparent effort to pave the way for the heavily armed Kurdish contingent to enter. The arrival marks the first time Turkey has allowed ground troops from outside Syria to reinforce Syrian Kurds, who have been defending Kobani for more than 40 days. Islamist militants affiliated to Al-Qaeda have seized the last remaining stronghold of Western-backed rebels in Syria's northwestern province of Idlib. Coming up next, a Future Television exclusive with photographer Sebastian Farnborough. Stay tuned. Welcome back. 7 Egyptian soldiers were wounded in an explosion near El Arish. A week after a deadly attack in the same area of the Sinai Peninsula killed 30 soldiers. This is according to a security official who said 2 officers and 5 soldiers were wounded in a bomb explosion against their vehicle. The explosive device had been planted on a road used by army patrols and police in the Sinai. And now for some news around the world in brief. Hundreds of families have fled their homes in the eastern Libyan city of Benghazi as street fighting raged between rival armed groups in the city. The fresh clashes erupted when the army, backed by the forces of former Army General Khalifa Haftar and armed youths, stormed several districts to take military installations from self-declared Islamist rebels. Burkina Faso's top military officials have thrown their support behind Presidential Guard Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida as leader of a transitional government after President Blaise Compaoré was forced from power. The move sidelines Compaoré loyalist General Honoré Traoré, the Joint Chief of Staff, who had announced a competing plan to lead the country following Zida's departure. A passenger spaceship being developed by Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic company has crashed during a test flight near the Mojave Air and Spaceport in California, killing one pilot and seriously injuring the other. The crash came days after another private space company, Orbital Science Incorporated, lost a rocket in an explosion moments after a liftoff in Virginia. Dubai-based photographer Sebastian Farnborough is causing quite a stir in the region. Born in the UK and widely traveled, this talented photographer has spent 3 years in Saudi Arabia, where he has delved into the Saudi culture. His journey in the Muslim kingdom has inspired him to launch a series of photographs entitled An Emerging Mystery, capturing a subject that has long been polarizing topic of debate, the Islamic veil. The photos depict typically covered Saudi women featured in highly uncharacteristic settings. Armed with his camera, Sebastian is determined to clear up misconceptions surrounding the Middle East, as he believes the Muslim world is severely misunderstood. Let's find out more about an emerging mystery with Sebastian himself. Welcome, Sebastian.
Hi, how are you doing?
How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks.
So my first question for you is, in what sense are Saudi women, an emerging mystery?
Well, obviously not for people who live in Saudi Arabia, but for the outside world. For example, say in New York, they've seen them walking down the streets, and so they're visible, but nobody really knows too much about them. So that's the sense of the mystery. And I think more so, for example, when I went to school, there was only one Muslim person in my school, and I think now England's a lot more multicultural than it was back then. So yeah, it's becoming more.
I'd like to focus on the term emerging here. Can you, like when I say emerging mystery, how is a Saudi woman, an emerging mystery? That's what I meant.
Well, they're becoming more kind of widely known in the world and achieving things and, becoming businesswomen. The Saudi woman that climbed Mount Everest, they're trying to take more control over their lives. But still, we don't know a great deal about them.
That's pretty interesting. And what has affected you personally the most about Saudi women? How have Saudi women affected you personally?
What do you mean, how they're interpreted in the West? Or?
No, how have they affected you personally? I mean, what did you like the most about them?
I don't really understand the question.
Oh, what has affected you the most about Saudi women? That means, what did you like the most about them? What did you appreciate about them, about them in general? What makes them stand out? Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, they're normal people. And I think in the West, we have this concept that if people are wearing a veil, that they're different somehow. But they're not, they're very gentle. Some of my friends introduced me to their wives, and so I got to know them, and yeah, they're just normal people. Okay. Just covering, that's the only thing,
All right. A picture is worth 1,000 words, so let's take a look at the picture of the woman in the water, and it's actually my favorite one. So could you just tell us in a few words what message this picture is sending across?
Well, it's like the title, An Emerging Mystery, and for me, it was based on my first experience in Saudi. I moved from Barcelona, so I was used to a very open way of life, and then I went to the beach in Saudi and I saw a woman swimming, and it was such a shock because I'd never seen anything like that. And so that for me embodies this whole change in the world, that Saudi women are trying to come forward and trying to take more control over their lives.
How do you think how do you think Western women could identify with say this woman on the picture?
Okay, the reason I did that was because if you look at Western newspapers and magazines and things, the veiled women, they're so unapproachable and they look more like objects, and you think, how can you connect with that? How can you understand that that's a person? So I wanted to produce, or this is the series, I want to produce personable images that Westerners can connect to, and then they can understand these women. And if I can get Westerners to understand, you know, such a conservative form of covering, then they'll be okay with all of them. That's the idea behind it.
Your photos have gone viral on the web. Do you feel your project has had some kind of impact on people's perception of the veil?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I haven't finished, but I've had so many emails from women around the world. A lot of Saudi women in England, and you know, they tell me they're treated badly because of the veil, and they really support what I'm doing. So yeah, it's been great, but I want to take it a lot further.
Okay, exactly. So I was going to get to this here. You're planning to go back to Saudi Arabia and take more photos to illustrate the positive aspects of the kingdom. What will your next project be focused on exactly? Is it going to be women, or is it going to be something else?
Yeah, that's the important thing. It isn't just about the women, and people don't know hardly anything about Saudi, and there's some wonderful things there: the generosity, the hospitality, how close the families are, the friendships, the respect towards elders, the safety. You know, there are a lot of things that I'd like to show to the West, and I really think that we could learn from each other. It's not all negative there. Of course there are bad things there, you know, the bad things in the West too, but I think we can meet halfway and learn from each other. That's the whole idea of this project.
So my question here, to be more precise, is you're going to be just taking random pictures of everything that's positive, or are you just going to focus on you know, one specific thing, like you did right now with the women?
No. I mean, I don't want to, you know, be too specific, because of course you go there, you can have new experiences and see new things. So I'll be looking for those kind of candid moments, but at the same time I'm going to create things based on my experiences with these themes, like family. For example, my next two shoots, I'm doing one with a veiled woman and a bow and arrow, and I want to show how a veiled woman can be powerful and beautiful, and I think that's very typical of an Arab household. And another one is a veiled woman with a baby, and then with that I want to show that she's caring. You know, it doesn't matter about the veil, you can see the love, and that's the idea, so Westerners can connect with that, not something that's just like an object.
You'll have to come back to Beirut, actually to Beirut. It's going to be your first time, and tell us all about your upcoming projects and possibly show us some pictures. Sure. All right. Thank you, Sebastian. Yeah. That was photographer Sebastian Farnborough speaking live from Dubai. Thank you so much. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi says the state should be fair in implementing the nationwide crackdown on illegal arms, saying the Lebanese army must raid Hezbollah locations in Beirut. The Lebanese army says it has arrested Ghali Hadara, an accomplice of an alleged ISIS commander who worked to establish an Islamic emirate in North Lebanon. Iraqi Peshmerga fighters enter the Syrian border town of Kobane, where they are expected to join the battle against ISIL fighters besieging the town. Those are your Saturday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice weekend.